Welcome to the Gamblin Gauchos. I'm Rob Bro. He's Kyle Jacobson. He is Money Mainville. We've got some stuff to go over today, including Texas Tech in November. We'll give you some swing guys, since we're maybe talking a little politics now on this show. Some swing state players that could either help or hurt your team this year. At least affect the bottom line. We'll also talk the brand, Patrick Mahomes, and more. We will start with the brand. Earlier this weekend, maybe a Friday afternoon, the trailer for the trailer dropped for the new series, The Brand, at least a new season. It's been around for a couple of seasons here. The trailer was a minute long, or the pre-trailer, I guess, because they announced that the trailer was coming today as I get the hiccups right when we start the show. Thoughts on the trailer as I try to recover here?
Rob, I was going to put you on the spot, since you and I have been best friends for a few years now, on what one of my most common gripes about Texas Tech football has been. But since you're a little bit incapacitated at the moment, Money, I'll lob it to you, and this is no slam dunk. You may have heard me complain about this, you may not have, but do you know what one of my biggest gripes about Tech football and Tech football fans and Tech football media has been over the last 5-ish years?
Ooh, 5-ish years throws me a curveball, because I was going to say too high of expectations, but that was really only relevant to last year, I think it's fair to say. So maybe I'll say not enough behind-the-scenes coverage.
Not where I was going with it. And Rob, now I feel like I need to sneeze, and so I hope that doesn't happen mid-sentence here, but if it does, apologies in advance. I have always been of the mindset, and maybe I have some age bias in this because of when I came of age and when I became a fan. I feel like most of our fans don't know anything that happened in Lubbock related to the football program before Mike Leach got here. And we talked about this a little bit last episode, I think, that it was really cool to see the Byron Hanspard hype video about Taj chasing that record. And they had footage of James Hadnot, Bobby Cavazos on there. It's that kind of thing that I feel like we haven't seen enough of. Like, I guarantee you some people watching that video were like, who's James Hadnot? Who's Bobby Cavazos? Hopefully they looked it up and found out. And so it was cool to see just an embrace of Wes Welker. I know he was here when Leach was here, but now that was, I guess maybe 21 years ago was Welker's last season. So it's cool to see some of that, and I love that they've kept Mahomes involved. Just really any way to bring former athletes back into the fold, I think, is a good maneuver. I'm a little bit conflicted on just the thought of, do we need more hype? And maybe I'm just scarred from last season, but last year kind of felt like, in hindsight, maybe we shouldn't have hyped everything up so much. And to their credit, I think they've shown a lot more restraint this offseason. It's been much more about the uniforms, the stadium. There haven't been any proclamations that I'm aware of about, well, this team could beat Georgia by 20 points, or this guy's the next Patrick Mahomes. I think there's been a little bit of typical Joey being Joey about like Micah Hudson's expectations and things like that. But they've kept it much more to a minimum compared to last offseason for sure. But I think that being said, even though we all don't want to get burned by the hype train once again, these types of pieces of content are really cool to see. And it looked like they were, from the trailer, going to kind of make it like, I saw a documentary about the Chiefs Super Bowl run, and each episode they kind of like picked a different player to highlight. I don't know if this will be that, but they did kind of seemingly list maybe 8 to 12 guys that would be more prominently featured. So I wonder if it turns into like a Last Chance U kind of thing, where like each episode, maybe there's one offensive player, one defensive player, something like that. But I really like getting to take a peek behind the curtain and learn more about some of these guys, especially the transfers that maybe have only been here a year or two. So I'm excited for it. I am I think on record saying I'm okay to keep drinking the Kool-Aid and I don't mind a little bit of hype. In fact, I'm starting to feel a little bit of disrespect, you guys. I see other Big 12 fans talking about like these are our key games and none of them are listed Texas Tech. We're not listed as a dark horse. We're not listed as a favorite. We're not listed as a contender anywhere. And so, there's a balancing act. I don't think it would be good or healthy for this team after what happened last year to go in as like a favorite. But you fell off hard, apparently, at least in the eyes of many. And they think that you're not even really going to be a factor at all in the Big 12 race. I would love to prove that wrong. So maybe there's a sense of that in the building. All that being said, I think the brand and content like that is really useful for fans. I think that's part of why Cliff maybe – I don't want to say why he didn't do well here because he had like certainly on-field and recruiting deficiencies. But Spike Dykes went 7-5 here for a long time, and everybody loved him. And it was because he was super friendly, got along well with the fans. He would go to the breakfasts and the luncheons and speak. That wasn't really Cliff's deal. Access to the program wasn't really Cliff's deal. So I do think that there is some value in terms of like coalescing the fan base and all that. I think we're already sold out on season tickets, so they don't really need to approach it from that vantage point. But it's just good for overall program buy-in. So I thought the trailer got me hyped because it incorporated guys like Mahomes and Welker. And if the trailer is any indication, it seems like they're on the right track with a really cool piece of content.
Yeah, and I hope it's more than 6-minute bursts like last year. I know, look, I understand it's a lot of work to put those together, to have enough content to film 17 hours and then get it down to 5 minutes or whatever it is. I know a lot goes into it. And I know you don't want to show a lot of practice, I'm sure. But I would love to see more maybe candid conversations around the coach's office or amongst players, maybe a night out with the players at the bowling alley or something like that, akin to what they do on Hard Knocks. And I understand the level of access and everything would be a little bit different between a professional athlete and a collegiate athlete. But, today, getting paid a little bit, to maybe put a few more hours in after on the clock to get some more content. I don't know. I've really enjoyed those the last few seasons. And they did something similar in Cliff's final year, maybe, and maybe a little bit in the Wells era, but the Joey ones have been very good. And I'm very excited about the brand once again. And it's just one of those, off-season check marks. We're a little closer because that's about to start. And I believe the team checks in this week. All right, so the brand is happening. We'll move on to the next bit of business, and that is Kyle, who wrote up on the patreon.com/Gamblin Gauchos, about the success of Joey McGuire, not only in conference play as related to his last few years here at Texas Tech, but in November, where I believe you lost the first week of November in his first season against TCU, and then lost one game in November last year. So overall, I believe 8-2, 7-2. And that's going to be huge if you can continue that trend this year because of what your schedule looks like toward the end.
Do you remember Matt Will's opening press conference in Lubbock, Rob?
Yeah, you got to run the ball to win in November, Kyle. And he did not.
Good memory.
Yeah.
I remember him saying that, and I was like, hell yeah, man. I was like, new chapter. I love Cliff.
Hell yeah.
But, it's time for a change. When he said that at the opening press conference, I was like, okay. I was like, nobody really knows who you are. You were kind of an out of left field hire. I mean, it made sense from like a career trajectory standpoint, like successful G5 head coach, and you come to a program like Tech. But he wasn't – people were talking about Cliff being on the hot seat and talking about like Neil Brown and Dana Holgerson, Seth Luttrell, and then we wind up with Matt Wells. But anyway, when he said that, I was like, okay, that is the mark of a culture shift because Cliff just got fired because we lost, at that point, what was it? I think we started that year 5-2 and then went 5-7, and that got him canned. So we must have lost at least 3 or 4 in a row in November. But yeah, it's, for all the disappointment in last year, if you zoom out, like, yes, it was not fun to lose to Texas by 50. But besides that one game, all the disappointment was very concentrated early in the season. You started 1-3. That only one was the FCS team that you played. And then after that, I mean, I don't know if it's because things started clicking or the team got better, the opponents got worse. I don't really know if I buy that. But you avoided, you start 1-3 and you start, shoot, I think we were 3-5 at one point last year. That's how you snowball into a really bad season. Like, that sounds obvious to say, but like, you can't wind up 3-9 if you're 5-2 or whatever. So the fact that we were able to salvage last season, going from, like, yes, still disappointing based on where the hype was, but hey, we had a winning record in conference play. We won a bowl game. Like, it could have been a lot worse. And had you asked me when we were sitting at 1-3, would we get to 7-6 with a bowl win? I would be like, no, I highly doubt it. And then the year before that, kind of a different story. Just I feel like that year's team just lost to a bunch of really good squads. Like, you go to NC State, they were top 15, I'm pretty sure. You go to Stillwater, I think they were top 10 at the time. You go to Kansas State, they win the Big 12. You go to Fort Worth, they started 12-0, made the college football playoff. So a lot has been made of, like, road struggles, I think, based on those data points, but you were a touchdown plus underdogs in each of those games, going up against, in a lot of cases, fifth-year quarterback type guys, and you're starting some rotation of, like, Baron Morton, Donovan Smith, just dinged up guys. And so anyway, it's impressive that through 10 games in November and December, so counting these bowl games, Joey's 8-2, and the two losses were both on the road at teams that made the 4-team college football playoff that year. So extremely elite competition. And I think off the top of my head, in the decade prior to Joey, so huge sample size there, we were something like, I think, winning 30 or 31% of November, December games before he got here. I don't know if we had a winning record in any individual year in those months before he got here. So could it be coincidence? Maybe. I think 10 games is a pretty decent sample size, and that's what he's played in November, December. Would love to piece that together with a really strong start in September and early October. But I don't know. To me, that seems like it's beyond coincidence, and it's not a fluke kind of deal, and that there was some sort of culture change, or this coaching staff just is able to make in-season adjustments better, not lose the team after a disappointing start like maybe has happened in the past. But it's a pretty significant 180 from where things have been. And again, this isn't cherry picking a bad November or two. It was like that for at least a full decade before he got here.
So I'm going back through Cliff years. I'm in 17. I think you're 6-13. In Patrick Mahomes' seasons, you played 3 games in November and 15 and won 2 out of 3. So there's your kind of fluky above 500 season in November.
What year was that?
Next season went 2-2 and 15 with Cliff and
Okay.
Pat.
Yeah.
And then 16 you went 2-2. Well, that was 17 you went 2-2. And that saved his job because he went 2-2 and beat Baylor and Texas in November. Namely, the Texas game saved the job. It's not. It wasn't a cherry pick, as you said. It wasn't even one coach. Tuberville struggled in November. There were seasons where Mike Leach ran down in November, and he lost a couple of games late to a Colorado or a Missouri late that you shouldn't have. So to be strong in November has been really, really nice for Joey. And I think that is, if you kind of want to go 3,000-foot picture keys to the season, win at home and win in November might be 1 and 2. Beyond, like, run the ball well, health at quarterback, that kind of stuff. if you win your home games and you're good in November, at least competitive in November, because you have two really big road games in November in Iowa State and Oklahoma State. I mean, those are probably two games that you schedule first and foremost to say if you're having a really good year, those could put you over the top. And if you're having a mediocre year, those could basically save the season if you can win a couple on the road late.
5 of those 6 wins from Joey in November have been one possession games too. And I think that's so much of what kind of embodies November football is it's competitive. Everyone's tired, everyone's fatigued, but everyone knows what's at stake. You've got to play your best football, and coming away with wins in those one possession games comes down to what you do on fourth down, how you run the ball in the second half, how you manage the clock, how you apply pressure on defense. And I feel like that's really where Joey has not been afraid to roll the dice. I think to a lot of people's surprise, even though it's kind of been his brand, I still think he takes chances on fourth down and in game situations where other people wouldn't. But if you want to win one possession game, sometimes you have to roll those dice. And at least in November, the odds have been in his favor.
Rob, have you been, or either one of you, have y'all been have y'all been perusing the Gamblin Gauchos DMs?
Not today, no. Did I miss something?
It wasn't today. It was in the last few days. I'll phrase this delicately, and if you want I'll put the full scoop in the Discord. So for our Patreon subscribers, but I'll phrase it this way: a very close source within the football program became aware of the numbers that we just described, and so they're familiar now with the November trend. And this source within the program says, we got to get better in September. We got to start strong. I'll get the exact wording correct in the Discord, but they know, and I think that they're intent on continuing this November trend and also adding the other component, which is getting off to a strong start. And Rob, like you said, winning all your home games is a good way to lay the foundation for both of those.
Certainly, with all the early home games, if you are winning at home, you're winning in September, especially those two non-conference at home, but also Cincinnati and Arizona State. I mean, those are going to be. They certainly wouldn't be massive wins, but they would be massive losses early on. And I think that's kind of a double-bladed sword there, double-edged sword. Not double-bladed, that'd be weird. Like the Darth Maul sword. But double-edged sword to have those kind of early conference games that you should win, because that can lead to a stumble if you're looking forward to some of those other games late in the year, or at least, or even like a Baylor or TCU there in the middle. Do you have the schedule memorized yet, Kyle?
I think so.
I'm getting there. I kept having to look it up, but I have to look it up so much I just kind of memorized it.
Yeah, I'm trying to stay in that 1-0 mindset, so I'm not looking too far ahead.
Yeah.
But I definitely know everything before the bye week.
1-0. It's a trickle down, man. 1-0. It's got us saying it. Of the preseason mantras, is that your favorite?
I don't know. I really liked 60 minutes of us until we kind of fell flat, because I believed it after 2022, especially with 3 overtime wins. I was like, damn, we have got to be a pretty, like, we're not going to win them all, but we've got to be a pretty unpleasant team to go up against. And then we lost to Wyoming, and I was like, well, maybe they can handle 60 minutes of us. Especially because their quarterback, I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but I've pretty much never respected an opponent in any sport more than Stanford in the 2021 Super Regional.
Yes.
They wore all black to a Super Regional that I think had highs at like 109.
Yeah.
And I was like, these poor West Coast candy ass mofos have no idea what they're in for. And they killed us.
Yep.
2-game sweep wasn't close. And I was like, okay, you just have to tip your hat. And, they obviously deserve to go to Omaha. But a close second is when they interviewed Andrew Peasley on the field. And he told them that they took us to the deep end of the pool. It's like, man, that's a way cooler way of saying 60 minutes of us, or they can't, handle this. They can't survive what we're about to throw at them. So I feel like 60 minutes of us had to end in Wyoming, and like you just left it there. You came home and you had to find a new mantra. Like, sorry, it's over with after that.
Yeah, that's when you bury or burn, whatever you want to pick. You burn the football from the game. You bury the box score or whatever order it is.
I do think. I mean, they're obviously not going to get a shot at revenge for Wyoming, but maybe they draw some kind of parallel between that experience and going to Pullman this year. And I do know after that they covered this on the broadcast, that's why I know it, but after the 2022 loss to Baylor, which got out of hand late, I think it was like 45-21, 45-24, something like that. Oh, shoot, it might have even been worse than that. I can't remember. Anyway.
It was worse.
Was it like 45-17?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Oh, anyway, they had the score plastered all over the weight room in the building the week before the 2023 Baylor game, and then you kind of returned the favor, beat them by 20 or so on their home turf. Could have run up the score, but you took a knee with, I think, goal to go at the end there. So I don't know. Maybe they'll have some deep end of the pool quotes up before they go to Pullman. Anyway, I kind of like when teams and coaches can draw on something from the past to inspire them for the future, as long as it's done. I do think there are some like rent-free things that shouldn't live in somebody's head, but I think when it's done well and you back it up like we did against Baylor last year, it can be advantageous.
Didn't the Stanford pitcher say something like he wore the black because it was going to be Stanford's or Texas Tech's funeral today? Is that true, or is that just said after the fact that by people?
I think that's something to go to when like an NBA guy wears all black to, game 7, and they've got him that shot of him like walking down the tunnel. So I'm sure that was probably part of it, or maybe it was just a toughness thing. It's like, yeah, we know it's going to be hot. We don't care. We're wearing all black.
Yeah.
But and especially like Stanford of all schools, if it was like if it was like Southern Mississippi from the Sun Belt, I'd be like, they've been in this heat before. That's like a tough, grinded out blue collar program. But Stanford, I was like, there's no way they're about to do this, and they did it.
They did,
unfortunately.
All right, you also have a list of 5 players that are swing state voters. One of them is was it a plumber named Joe? What was that guy?
Joe the Plumber, yeah.
Joe the Plumber back in the day. All right, so who are your Joe the Plumbers that could provide the swing here for Texas Tech football?
Yeah, so these players I'm calling like the biggest wild cards or biggest swing players, and what I mean by that is if they exceed expectations, they could be extremely influential in raising Texas Tech's ceiling, and if they underperform expectations, they could be, I guess, contributors to us not meeting our season goals. Another way to phrase what this is not maybe is like, you wouldn't have said going into last basketball season that Pop Isaacs was a big wild card or swing player, because it was kind of baked into the equation. Like, he's supposed to be a productive offensive player. Same with like Tosh Brooks going into this season. Is he important? Absolutely. But I think we all understand we're going to get a certain level of production no matter what from him. And so that's baked into the equation. We're not like, well, if Tosh can run for 1,000 yards this season, then da-da-da-da-da. Like, we know he's going to run for 1,000. So these are guys that like could be big-time hits, could be big-time misses. And whether we hit on most of these or miss on most of them will swing whether this is a successful season or not. Going back to last year, who these guys might have been, I think I threw some of these out. It'd be like Tyler Shuck. Can he stay healthy for a full season? Jerron Bradley, freshman All-American. Can he make the jump and become, a 1,000-yard receiver or something like that. Steve Linton, big-time transfer, a lot of hype coming in, replacing a top 10 draft pick in Tyree Wilson. Cole Spencer and Rusty Stats as kind of a duo on the offensive line. And Tyler Owens could have been another name you throw out there. Like he's replacing Reggie Pearson, was talked up a lot. And so, I go through that list, and you're like, more misses than hits, right? I mean, I think Cole Spencer –
all whiffs.
Well, I think Cole Spencer held his own.
Okay.
I think he was at least a starting caliber player for you.
You said the duo, so I was taking Rusty Stats.
Yeah.
The dribbler.
But I think everybody else, it's fair to say, maybe it's on a spectrum from dreadful to didn't quite live up to expectations, but they're somewhere on that. And maybe that's why you went 7-6 instead of 9-4 or something. So some guys that I picked for this year, we'll start off with Captain Obvious, Baron Morton. And it's like, hey, his ceiling is Zach Kelly saying he's got Mahomes level arm talent. And the first half of the game in Stillwater in 2022, where I saw throws from a Texas Tech quarterback that I haven't seen since Mahomes left. But his floor is just straight up not being available to play. And that has been a trend with Texas Tech quarterbacks going back 7 years now, is availability is sometimes their best ability. So a huge part of this year's season hinges on, is he going to play 10 or 12 games, or is he going to play 4 or 6? And then, I'm willing to roll the dice. If he's healthy for 12 games, we'll see what he's got talent-wise and production-wise. But we need a quarterback to stay healthy if we're going to get anywhere near our ceiling. I mean, it's kind of remarkable looking back on 2022 that we had 3 guys all start, I think 4 games apiece in the regular season and survived like we did. So that's number 1. I know it's Captain Obvious. Number 2, we had a whole segment on an episode about this, but Micah Hudson. Is he one of the top true freshman performers in the country? Is he true freshman All-American, or is he a backup who's eased into the offense? Does he get 300 yards or 900 yards? Is he wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 4? And if he's wide receiver 4, is it because we have 3 800-yard receivers ahead of him, or is it because nobody's any good? Number 3, on the edge, Isaac Smith, a player that really flashed in relief of Tyree Wilson in 2022, then missed all of last year. You were not good at rushing the passer, point blank, last season. Very poor pressure rates, sack rates, any way you want to look at that. And so he's kind of the only guy I think you're adding to the fold at the edge position. Everybody else, Amir Washington, Joseph Adedire, Charles Esters, all returning players. So we'll see what kind of a difference Isaac Smith makes. And if he can sustain for 12 games what he flashed in the bowl and against Kansas back in 22, that could be something really special for this year's team. Staying at edge rusher, Amir Washington, same kind of deal. Didn't know that guy was playing until the bowl game, and I remember having to look at the roster when 96 kept making plays. I was like, who is this guy? If he can do half of that, on a per-game basis for 12 games, he'll probably be an All-American. I mean, hell, he had 4 tackles for loss and 2 sacks and a forced fumble in that one game. So if he's 2 tackles for loss, 1 sack, and half a forced fumble per game for 12 games, that'll work. He's got a lot of competition, though. I feel like we have a ton of depth at each of those edge spots, so we'll see. And then the last one I think is going to be your starting left tackle, Sterling Porcher, a transfer from Middle Tennessee State, who, frankly, I don't think was nearly as widely regarded as some of the other guys you brought in this year's portal class. Jalen Conyers, Josh Kelly, Vinny Scurry. I am not an offensive line talent evaluator or scout by any stretch of the imagination, but I put on his Middle Tennessee tape and honestly found a lot more flaws than I saw good things. His PFF grades seem to back me up. He played more than 600 snaps last year, so that's a full season's worth of snaps, large sample size, and he graded out with 52.5, which is well below average. Like I would say if we have anybody in the starting 11 on offense or defense grading out at 52.5, it's time to get somebody else a shot. So I don't know. Our scouting department certainly has traits and skills and measurables that they look for, and he checked enough of those boxes. Maybe they can develop him into something that he was not at Middle Tennessee. But again, this is a guy that I think you're expecting to start at one of the most important positions on the field. And if he's a 52.5 PFF guy all year, that is not going to bode well for us. Actually, at 7, Rob, if you'll allow me a couple of bonus picks here.
Sure.
Free safety Chapman Lewis, a true sophomore who's replacing a guy who was a borderline top 100 pick in Adrian Taylor Demerson, who played, I want to say roughly 2,000 snaps in his college career, 5-year player. How big is that drop-off going to be? I don't think it's fair to expect Chapman Lewis to play at Adrian Taylor Demerson's level, but can he be 85% of it? If so, he won't be a weak point on this defense. If we go from top 100-ish NFL draft pick to his replacement is the worst guy on the starting 11, which I don't think is the case, that could be pretty noticeable, especially at a pretty important spot that there's a miscommunication, a broken play, probably means the other team is getting a ton of yards down the field. Then last but certainly not least, one of the forgotten positions in the game is punter. We have been very fortunate for 5 years to have an all Big 12, all-American caliber punter. And you take for granted, okay, an offensive series doesn't go well, that stinks, but we'll be able to flip the field. The other team isn't going to get good field position. What is life without Austin McNamara going to look like? And so Jack Burgess was a very good FCS punter. His average was honestly not that far off from McNamara's. So it'll be important. McNamara was just so reliable. And I don't think you're bringing in anybody to say, well, we need you to be better than the All-American and the guy who's playing on Sundays now at that spot. But can you at least carry your fair share of the weight, be 90% of what he was last season? If so, I think that's a drop-off you can live with if you make marginal improvements at other positions on the field. So those are my 7, and I'd love to hear y'all's feedback on those, or if you've got others of your own we can riff on here.
Run through them real quick one more time.
Baron Morton, Micah Hudson, Isaac Smith, Amir Washington, Sterling Porcher, Chapman Lewis, and Jack Burgess.
I agree on a lot of those, all of those. Sterling Porcher is a huge piece. Now, you could have said any 5 of the offensive linemen. You could have said Caleb Rogers moving inside. How does he flip from tackle to guard? You could have said Sheridan Wilson or David Carter were going to start at center. You could have said Vinny Scurry. Same logic, moving up to the Big 12. So all of those I agree with. Micah Hudson will be interesting because I think he could be unproductive relative to hype, but you could still have production from the other wide receiver group. So I'm not sure that that's as big, but certainly the ceiling there. I mean, if he's a 1,000-yard receiver as a true freshman, that is absolutely swinging your season one way or the other. I would add A.J. McCarty. I think the star position is so important for this defense. If he can be productive, him or Brendan Jordan, either, if they can be productive at the star position, I think your defense is much better. And if they are Tyler Owens, your defense struggles through the first half like last season. Kind of a sliding scale there between Muddy Waters or Tyler Owens. You'd love to have more Muddy Waters there from the start.
Yeah, my list was Baron Morton, which feels like Sharpie. That should be on everyone's list. AJ McCarty, again, just ceiling of what the ceiling can be like when you have a solid piece there at star. Amir Washington, edge rushers are game breakers. They make the rest of the defense better. I think he can really help make the linebackers better and get more out of Ben Roberts. Vinny Scurry, really good pass blocker. What does he do for Taj? How does he kind of anchor the rest of the inside unit? But then the only other guy I had who was not mentioned was Caleb Douglas. I really like his physical traits. I think he's experienced, although he's missed quite a bit of time. He's been around college football programs for a long time. And so he looks like an NFL receiver. And I think he can be a real weapon for this team where guys are really thriving with yak and can kind of slide on the inside. I think he gives you some good length and ball skills on the outside, where we've seen so many Texas Tech outside receivers thrive down the field. And so I think he's a guy who can kind of unlock some things on your offense if he hits.
Agreed on all of that. A couple quick notes I just thought of as we were talking through that. What makes Amir Washington's performance in that bowl game even more impressive is I think he played like 32 snaps. So like 4 tackles for loss in a game is ridiculous, no matter even if you play 85 snaps. But if he's getting a tackle for loss on like 1 out of every 8 snaps that he plays, I mean, that's like, I don't know, 2 every 3 possessions that the offense has the ball. I mean, it's ridiculous. And he's not going to be able to maintain that pace. But again, if he could just be half that good, it would be an upgrade at that spot versus what we saw last year in terms of productivity. What makes Sterling Porcher at left tackle even more intriguing to me, and again, clearly the staff and the scouts see something in him that I don't. But you kind of had other options already on the roster at tackle. Like in the bowl game, you just had Ty Buchanan play left tackle, Caleb Rogers stayed at right tackle. Then you bring on these interior linemen like Scurry and Davion Carter. You could start Sheridan Wilson at center, put Scurry and Carter, the 2 transfers, as your guards, and keep 2 guys who started games for you last year at tackle without inserting Sterling Porcher, a very bad PFF, according to PFF grades, tackle from Middle Tennessee, without inserting him into the starting lineup. So, Caleb Rogers, I think, really good run blocker, maybe leaves a little bit to be desired in pass pro. But, like, honestly, if you're asking me right now, would I rather have him start at right tackle, Buchanan at left, versus roll the dice with Porcher? I think I'm taking the former, which is why, hey, we could look back on this in 4 months and say, well, that's why Kyle's not an offensive analyst, and maybe Sterling Porcher is first-team All-Big 12 left tackle and doesn't allow a sack all season. I'll say, great, I'm really glad I was wrong about that. Now, I'm not trying to single him out, but I don't know. You had personnel there where I feel like you didn't necessarily need him to come in as a transfer and be a starter at one of the tackle spots. And money, I think Caleb Douglas is a good one, especially because I think Josh Kelly will command so much attention. If you tell me like opposite of him, we have a 6'4", 205 SEC transfer. It's like, am I going to be shocked if that guy's productive? No. Like, that makes all the sense in the world. The pieces just need to come together right for it. And I guess one last guy that none of us mentioned is Jalen Conyers. And I think Tech fans are very skeptical that we'll ever properly utilize a tight end. I think some of that is also overblown on our part. Tight ends aren't all Jason Morrow. They don't have 100 catches every season. But Jalen Conyers is starting to get some buzz from just like NFL draft type, analysts on Twitter, Senior Bowl guys. I think the consensus on him is maybe the Arizona State numbers don't wow you, but he was kind of stuck at a bad program that maybe didn't utilize him that well. Especially if we're going with some 2 tight end looks where he and Tharp are on the field together. His athleticism is just being praised so much that he can line up in the slot. He can line up at H-back. If we find really creative ways to utilize him and he's on the field for, 60+% of the snaps this season, he could be another one that's just like, okay, we haven't had this guy, this kind of X factor tight end in a long, long time that could help swing this season in a positive direction.
There's a former Arizona State coach that is doing influencing now in college football. Brenneman or something is his name. He listed Virginia Tech and Texas Tech and Rutgers as dark horse teams of the season. And his main point for Texas Tech was Jalen Conyers being a John Mackey Award type player. Now, take it with a grain of salt here that he recruited Conyers to Arizona State. So he certainly believes in him, and if he won the John Mackey, that would make his that would go back and make his recruiting even better. But there is that hype out there that A, Texas Tech is a team to watch, and B, Jalen Conyers is a player to watch. I think his name was Brenneman, something like that. I've pulled up some Florida International offensive highlights. Porter has not done poorly yet, but this is
Wait, Florida International?
Middle Tennessee against Florida International.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
But it's all the good plays from Middle Tennessee, so I need to pull up some full games.
And that's
Yeah.
I watched, I think, highlights that like balanced. It was Middle Tennessee's highlights and their opponents, so it would show, if an edge rusher blew by Porcher, like that was on the other team's highlights. I will say he might be really funny because there's a clip of him. It's not even the guy he blocked, but one of his teammates like pancakes a guy, and he's just like laying on the ground. So the quarterback is like rolling out of a pocket that has gotten blown up, and Porcher like doesn't have an assignment, so he like looks back at the guy and he does this like da 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 da. Like it's not even a guy that he pancaked, but instead of like looking for somebody to block, he just like shuffles away, like kind of loosely follows the quarterback, and I don't know, is pretending he's like shooting this guy with an airsoft gun or something. I saw that clip. I was just like cracking up laughing. So he might be kind of a character. I don't know.
We'll have to see. I hope he's nasty.
I'm gonna try to find that video and I'll send it to y'all.
We'll see. Okay. I think that's pretty much covers the Texas Tech portion of the broadcast. We also had another incident this week of a football team in the NFL just putting their, I guess you could call it foot in their mouth, putting their Muppet in their mouth in this case, with the Las Vegas Raiders. A fan brought a Kermit Muppet to practice with a Patrick Mahomes wig and uniform on. Not the fan, the Muppet had it on. And they gave it to this 6th-round DB, and he was cracking up at it. And there was an opportunity for some video, I guess. The video was tweeted and deleted quickly. And then the person who posted the video was like, man, Kansas City fans are real sensitive. It's like, well, look, I get it. I know there are people out there that get made fun of for their voices and probably just brush it off. And I'm sure Patrick does to some extent. But you're talking about a 2-time MVP, a 2-time Super Bowl MVP, a 3-time Super Bowl MVP, 3-time Super Bowl champion, who is 10-2 against the Oakland Raiders, though the Raiders got them the last time, and then they won a Super Bowl in Las Vegas. And just lighthearted making fun of him like nothing's wrong there. Well, Patrick Mahomes did see the video. He was asked about it in a press conference, and he said, I don't really pay much attention to that stuff. It's early in the season, but that will be handled when it's handled. What does that mean, Co?
I think I made this comparison when we were talking about Jamar Chase refusing to say his name, that I think Mahomes saw The Last Dance with Jordan and started taking everything personal. I think he actually did it before Jordan. So I've got a list now of, I tried to go roughly in chronological order on times that Patrick Mahomes either was disrespected or at least felt disrespected and pretty openly said that like fueled him or took him to another level. So the first one, Rob, I think you mentioned last episode. I guess it was when they were playing the Bears, maybe his first year that he was actually getting some playing time, and he scored a touchdown and he counted to 10 on his fingers. And he was the 10th pick. And the Bears famously took Trubisky number 1 or as the first quarterback off the board with Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes all available. And he was, I think if I remember right, he was kind of asked about after the game, like, hey, what was the counting to 10? And he kind of brushed it off like, oh, I didn't even remember doing that. I don't know what I might have been counting. So he's kind of like playing coy, like, yeah, I don't know what that was about. We're pretty sure it was, basically 9 teams screwed up, letting me fall this far.
Yeah.
The next few are all about the Raiders, which should be a lesson learned. So I forgot about this or didn't know it at the time. But the first time he lost to the Raiders, I think he started 5-0 against the Raiders, lost his 6th matchup against them. And it was at Arrowhead. And John Gruden and the team bus took a literal victory lap around the stadium. Like after they won, they showered, they did their media, they get in the team bus, and they just circle around Arrowhead Stadium, probably popping champagne and stuff. Literally like they had won a Super Bowl. And it was some regular season game that probably didn't matter. Like Mahomes was obviously on the way to winning the division, at minimum going to the AFC Championship game. I don't remember exactly which year this was. And the Raiders were on their way to doing absolutely nothing. Like they haven't won a playoff game in 20 years. So that term, they treated us like we were their Super Bowl, that is a little bit played out, but that is some pretty Super Bowl behavior right there. But then, so Patrick Mahomes averaged 35 points per game against the Raiders before that loss. Since that loss, he's averaged 36 points per game versus the Raiders, and until that terrible game on Christmas, won another 5 in a row. One of those 5, they were down by 17 points, and you'll remember Max Crosby, a very good player in his own right, maybe one of the best at his position in the league. Rob, do you have the soundboard ready do you have the bleep function?
Yeah.
You remember when Mahomes told Max Crosby, "You woke up the wrong mother." And he gets all in his face, and this clip is on the Netflix series Quarterback. He said, "You woke up the wrong mother. You woke up the wrong mother. You woke up the wrong mother. I'm here all day. I'm here all day. You woke up the wrong mother." And they came back from 17 points down, won that game, becomes like this famous clip. And like you're just thinking to yourself, if you're the other team, why in the world would you shove this guy after the play or say something about his mama or tweet something or like, what the hell are you thinking? But anyway, so the Chiefs come back from down 17 after Max Crosby woke up the wrong mother effort. Then we have this whole Burrowhead stuff. And this is like one of the very few playoff games. I guess it's like one of 2 playoff games where you can say Mahomes didn't play well. They lose the AFC Championship game at Arrowhead to Joe Burrow and the Bengals. Pretty bad second half collapse. Honestly, it ends on an INT in overtime. And the Bengals players call it Burrowhead Stadium. And we know how that went. The next season, the Chiefs exacted their revenge at Arrowhead Stadium. They beat the Bengals for a trip to the Super Bowl. That was the Chiefs' second Super Bowl championship in this dynasty, the first of them going back to back. And I don't remember at what point in the season this happened or off season, but Jamar Chase was asked about Pat or Patrick, and his response was, "Pat who?" I guess Mahomes caught wind of that, and during the ring ceremony, he's got his 2 rings, and he's acting like he's on the phone. He says, "That's who," on Twitter. Like he doesn't tag Jamar Chase. This is probably months after that comment was made, and he just says, "That's who." And so, like, he files these things away. He remembers when other players or teams say something about him, do something about him. Last year's playoff run, after they beat Miami, they were about to go on the road to Buffalo. It's the first time that the Chiefs, it's the first time that they were officially playing a road game in the playoffs. They had to play Tampa Bay in Tampa, but it was, I guess, called a neutral site game. Anyway, Bills offensive tackle Deion Dawkins was doing some kind of media interview before that game, and was talking about how great their fans were, and Bills Mafia is insane, to be fair. And just what it would be like for the Chiefs and Mahomes to go on the road in that environment for their first away game in the playoffs. And he said, good luck. And Patrick Mahomes, after that game, posts on Instagram, he says, good luck, with a picture of him scoring a touchdown against the Bills. Then we have the Justin Tucker incident, where Justin Tucker is intentionally warming up on the wrong half of the field. And Mahomes and Kelsey basically just like move his helmet out of the way. He tries to kind of like put it back and say like, no, I'm kicking here or whatever. And they just kind of like completely ignore him. They just like throw his stuff out of the way. Like, hey, the GOAT needs this area to warm up. I don't know what you think you're doing. Like as if Mahomes needs any extra motivation to try to beat them to go to back-to-back Super Bowls. You're going to screw with him, try to play mind games on the field during warm-ups. And we know what happened there. I forgot one. It was during – no, it was before that game. The Chiefs were the underdogs in Vegas. The Ravens, to be fair, the Ravens had just beaten the brakes off the 49ers in like one of the last games of the regular season. Played a really good game against the Texans, which was this quickly ascending team in the AFC. So the Chiefs were still like kind of being discounted at this point, despite being the defending champs. And Mahomes is like walking through the tunnel before the game, and you remember this like my eyebrow itches action that he gave the media walking into the locker room. Do y'all remember that? Or he's like adjusting his sunglasses, doing this to him.
Yeah.
So then he goes out there. Justin Tucker's in his way. They win that game on to their, what was that, fourth Super Bowl in 6 years, I think, 5 years?
Yep. There's another Ravens one from 2020.
Okay, give it to me.
Lamar Jackson was ranked first in the preseason. What is going on in the chat section? He was ranked first in the NFL Top 100. And then the Chiefs played the Ravens that season, the following season. Mahomes threw 4 touchdowns against the Ravens and counted to 4. And everyone thought it was because that was his 4th touchdown. But Lamar Jackson was ranked number 1 in that NFL Top 100, and Mahomes was 4th. So he's like, oh, yeah, 4th best player throwing 4 touchdowns against the team of the guy with the first player and beating the brakes off. So, yeah, that was another one.
That pretty much brings us to this offseason when we talked about Jamar Chase wouldn't say his name. And I think Jamar Chase is evolving. Like, he went from Pat Who to, like, hey, credit where it's due. He's good, but I'm not going to say his name. It's still pretty rent-free, but it's not, like, disrespectful, I don't think. I think on the third ring ceremony picture, when Mahomes was wearing ring number 3, Money, you might have to help me out with this, but it was some sort of rap lyric reference where he said, the caption just says, Big Me. And I guess that's from a verse that is something like, there's no big 3, it's just big me, something like that. And I think, I could be wrong, I think that stems from some conversations about like AFC quarterback rivalries and like, oh, it's Mahomes Allen, it's, Mahomes Jackson, Mahomes Burrow, trying to make it into this Brady Manning style rivalry. I think that was his way of saying like, I have no peer as I'm doing this. There's no 1 and 1A. Like it's me, and then everybody else is playing catch up for second. And then the Raiders, for some reason, like, look, the Chiefs, they start next season with the Ravens in an AFC Championship game rematch, and then they get the Bengals. Like, you're starting right off the bat with 2 games that have serious playoff and home field advantage implications. You got some other games that they play the Texans. They go on the road to the 49ers. Like, why on earth would you, as probably one of the more obscure games on the schedule, why would you give them reason to circle your logo on the calendar? Like, it's the NFL. Everybody's competitive. Everybody wants to win every game. But there's a little something extra there when it's the Ravens, the Bengals, the Bills, the 49ers. I don't know if they play the Cowboys, but a team like that, the Packers. No offense to the Raiders, but like you're lining up with Aiden O'Connell. You're going to be scrapping for last place in the division. Why on earth would you give the best player in the world some kind of extra motivation to go out there and throw for 5 touchdowns on you? Because he will. Like, and you have to see him twice as well. It's not even just like, oh, maybe we'll play him this year in the non-conference schedule or something. Like, you have to live with this man torching you twice now because you wanted to give a 7th-round rookie a puppet at training camp. It's just ridiculous. And like, I don't know when teams are going to learn or if they will. I think everybody should take a page out of Tyree Wilson's playbook and say, hey, do you have a message for Patrick Mahomes? No, sir, I do not.
Yeah.
And like, I get it. They're competitors. They all have to believe sincerely within their own locker rooms that we can go out there and beat the Chiefs. But to give them fodder in July is just such an unforced error to me. Surely they've got to see this like MJ-esque component to Pat's approach to the game. It's like if you piss him off on social media or during warm-ups or during training camp or on your stupid top 100 lists, like he is taking notes and he is going to freaking kill us the next time we have to play him. Do they not know? Have they not heard? Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, and I will say it was just a fan account, and it was a fan that brought the puppet, and it was a 6th-round pick. It wasn't a starter. So maybe they're learning a little bit, but this guy, if he gets in a game, is going to realize they're going to – I mean, Patrick's going to throw at him 10 times in a row if he's in the game.
They are motioning Xavier Worthy to wherever that corner is lined up on the field and saying, run as far and as fast as you can, and we're going to chuck it to you.
Yeah. Okay, so Patrick Mahomes is petty. We get it. And not only is he petty, he backs it up. So I think if he had done all this stuff and then not won 3 Super Bowls, it's like, all right, that guy's kind of a dick. But that's how Michael Jordan was too. Like, if Mahomes did all this and didn't win, he'd be Baker Mayfield. But Baker Mayfield backed it up in college, so everybody loved him. He hasn't backed it up in the NFL. So everyone's like, well, that guy's kind of a dick. So.
Well, again, there is like Dabo would always get clowned on for trying to contrive this narrative of like, well, nobody gave little old Clemson a shot. It's like, you guys won 2 national championships in the last 3 or 4 seasons. What are you talking about? It like for the most part, yeah, nobody's like, hey, can the Chiefs make the playoffs again this year? Is Patrick Mahomes an elite quarterback? Like, we're obviously past that. They're, in my opinion, the best 5-year dynasty in NFL history. He's one of the best players in NFL history. But they still do give him some kind of bulletin board material with this. Like, he's not just making this up, like looking for a reason to get mad at something. Like, Jamar Chase could have just answered that question and said, you have to say it's Patrick Mahomes right now, but we've got a lot of belief in our guys, and we're looking forward to the season. Hopefully we can dethrone him. Like, that's not bulletin board material. And if you're some rookie, 233rd pick in the NFL draft, you don't have to mock the best player in the world. You can just show up to camp and try to make the team like a normal person. If you're the other team's kicker, you don't have to go poke a bear in the eye. Like, it's your job to, make a 45-yarder when we need it. It's not to go trash talk and rile up Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes before the game. I feel like every team in the NFL needs a personnel guy, call him an analyst or whatever, just like a no bulletin board material for the Chiefs, at least in the AFC. Like, hey, this week on social media and during press availability, we've got to be really buttoned up. Please don't say anything that could offend 15 on the other side. When we go out for warm-ups, don't say anything. Like, let's just mind our own business and try to beat him.
I would not be surprised. I think that guy was a 6th-round pick. I would not be surprised to see him get cut in training camp. Not because of that specifically, but I would not be surprised if he was not on the Raiders this year.
Well, especially the Raiders. Like, you're 2-10 against the guy. And I actually respect their head coach. I think he made them a lot better at the end of last year, and I think Antonio Pierce was the right guy for that job. But he's already talking about like, oh yeah, the Bulls, that they had the Jordan rules in the '90s, and like we're gonna come up with the Mahomes rules. Like, okay, I mean, good for you, but can you keep that in house? And like, if it works for you, great. But if you are broadcasting to the entire world that you have Mahomes rules and this strategy to beat the Chiefs, and then he goes like, I don't know, 32 for 38 with 4 touchdowns on you, it looks really stupid. And then he's going to tweet something after he does that and say, Chiefs Kingdom rules or something like that. And like, we're all going to know exactly what you said that pissed him off that made him play that well against you.
Yeah, and I forgot about Antonio Pierce and the Jordan rules. Basically putting out a bounty on Mahomes. The NFL had to look into that. And they're like, what do you mean, buddy? Because we can't be saying that stuff out loud here. I mean, he's gonna go full Greg Williams. Greg Williams. That was the Bounty Gate guy.
Sounds right.
And he stayed in the league for
Yeah.
10 years after that. Went to the Browns.
I've still never seen that show where Kevin James plays Sean Payton like during his suspension.
Yeah, I don't think I ever will.
I might not either. It's not high on the list right now.
No, it's not high on the list. You do need to watch Silence of the Lambs. That was brought up in the Discord this week. Silence of the Lambs. What else? What else was brought up that you'd never seen? Well, there were some sports movies last week you'd never seen. All right, that's all I got. Final thoughts?
Thought you were gonna give me some trivia.
Well, I was going to if we need to stretch the show, but we're an hour in. Do you want to do it?
Give me like 2 or 3.
All right, let me pull it up. Why don't you give me some time here?
Money, any thoughts on the Mahomes rules? Did they have Mainville rules when you were playing at Plano High School?
It was try and get that guy in the game so we can burn him. But no, I think it's a bold strategy for sure. I mean, I think it's kind of easy to look around and figure out which guys have big egos and love to talk but don't always back it up. But then there's kind of a certain cut of athlete where they're humble, like they're well trained, they know they're great, but they don't always show it. But they've still got like the sicko side to them where like they're gonna stay up at night, they're gonna think about what you said, they're gonna think about it during practice, they're gonna think about it during the off season. And I feel like Mahomes is very much that guy where he'll try and brush it off, behind a microphone or in front of the press. But once he's on the field, it's the only thing he's thinking about other than obviously winning the football game. And so I think it's a bold strategy, especially for arguably one of the best athletes in the world right now. So we'll see how it pans out for them.
I feel like I see it with Luka Doncic in the NBA. Maybe not like specific things people say, but just a guy who plays with an extreme edge and will like yell at you, cuss you out, trash talk you the whole game. Like he's not trying to just politely be a little bit better than you. Like he wants to destroy your soul when you play him. And I love watching guys like that. Tiger was like that as much as you could be on a golf course. Such a polite game, like, oh, we'll do a golf clap. Tiger's like, fist pumping, screaming after he like chips one in.
Screaming at photographers.
Yeah, and like had to be as intimidating as you can be against an opposing golfer. I feel like that was Tiger on the golf course.
Yeah. Oh, and the crowds. I think a lot of guys got shook because the crowds followed him and Tiger didn't care.
Well, okay, so it's Olympic season. Michael Phelps had this too. And I saw some throwbacks to like apparently one of the relays that the Americans won during his quest for 8 gold medals in one Olympics. The French were talking a bunch of noise before the games. And it's one of the things like the Americans didn't respond in the media. It's just like we show up and the best way to shut them up is just by winning. And they did. There was this other guy in one of the individual events that was like awkwardly trying to stare down Phelps, because they're in like the little warm-up areas. And it's that shot of Phelps is just kind of like looking straight ahead. He's like wearing his big coat and everything to stay warm. And this guy is like just all in his face, trying to like stretch, like bother him, annoy him kind of. And Phelps just destroyed him in that race, I'm pretty sure. It's like, what are you doing? Like, I don't even know your name, other swimmer. Why are you in Michael Phelps's face with this? Like, if there's some guy from Italy that you were college rivals with and you want to do that, like, fine. That you want to, like, flaunt your gold medal or your silver medal too after y'all both lose to Michael Phelps, that's fine. But, like, why is any golfer doing that to Tiger Woods, any swimmer doing that to Michael Phelps, any football player doing that to Patrick Mahomes? Just what are you thinking?
All right, we've got the career rushing leaders for the Big 12. We did the passing leaders for all of college football a couple of weeks ago now. So I want the career, not season. This is career, and it's only the career within the confines of the Big 12. So 96 to today. And there are teams that are not currently in the Big 12 involved.
Man, okay. My first thought was Ricky Williams, but I'm pretty sure he only played 2 seasons in the Big 12. He still may have had enough to, like, crack.
Still number 2.
He played 2 seasons and he's number 2?
He played 3 seasons.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he had 96, 97,
Oh, that's
and
right.
90. Yeah.
I was saying just 97, 90. I forgot it started with football season in 96.
So
Okay.
he had all 3, 3 of his 4 seasons. He had 5,289 yards. That is number 2.
Okay.
1 for 1.
Adrian Peterson only played 2, but they were 2 really good seasons. Well, actually, he
Number
is?
8.
Okay.
Number 8. He played 3 seasons, technically.
Oh, I thought he left after a redshirt sophomore year.
I don't believe he redshirted.
Oh, okay. I had that wrong then. Let's see
The
here.
4 number is 3,763, if that helps.
It's how much?
3,700.
Okay. And it has to be in Big 12 play. So, like, a Houston running back wouldn't be on this list, right?
Right.
Okay. Let me think here.
Money, you got any guesses?
I'm thinking Darren Sproles, maybe.
Darren Sproles, number 3.
Great pick. Chuba Hubbard ran for 2,001 season. Is he on there?
Let's see. No, but there is an Oklahoma State guy. Chuba Hubbard, number 17 at 3,459, so just off the list.
Who was right before him? Kendall Hunter?
Kendall Hunter is the name. He was not right before him. Kendall Hunter, 4,181. He's number 6.
Okay, sweet.
Right before him was Justice Hill.
That's right.
Justice Hill is right above him at number 16.
Okay.
So you were on the right track, but you said the right name. So,
let's see here.
there are 3 guys from current Big 12 schools left.
Oh, I feel like Brees Hall is on there for sure.
Brees Hall, number 9.
Okay.
Halfway done.
How about his predecessor, David Montgomery?
David Montgomery is not on the list and not in the top 20.
Oh, okay. How about the OU tandem of Joe Mixon or Samaje Perine?
Samaje Perine, number 7. 6 on the guest list. So you've got number 1, number 4, number 5, and number 10 left. I'll give you schools if you want me to.
Not yet. This might be.
You should know the number 1 pretty easily.
This might be a little bit out of left field, but how about Letty Brown? Did he play long enough?
Letty Brown is not in the top 20. That was Baylor?
No, West Virginia.
Oh, West Virginia, Letty Brown. Okay.
Kansas State he led the conference in rushing. I can't remember his name. It's like Alex something, maybe.
Not there. No.
Is Cedric Benson on the list?
Number 1, Cedric Benson.
The pride of Midland.
I'm going to be honest here. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I do not think he'll get the rest.
R.I.P. to Cedric Benson, by the way. Gone way too soon.
R.I.P.
Start by giving us schools. Maybe that'll jog our memories.
All right, we'll start at number 10, Iowa State.
Oh. So I'm thinking of Troy Davis, but I don't know if he had too many yards in the Big 8 to be on this list. Troy Davis?
So that's a good thought. He was too early, I believe.
Okay.
So he was 94 to 96.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he only had 1 year in the Big 12 then.
This is the guy right after him.
I won't get it. Money, do you know?
I can't even think of a guess.
Darren Davis.
Ah, yes, his younger brother, Darren.
Yeah. So number 4, I'm not going to give you the school, but I'll give you the position. He was a quarterback. From 2002 to 2005. He also returned kicks.
Is this like L. Roberson?
No. All right. Missouri.
Oh, Brad Smith.
Brad Smith.
Wow. I wouldn't have guessed anybody besides a running back, but that makes sense.
All right, I'll give you years here. Think of a guy who was in the conference for a long time, from 2013 to 2016 on a team that was running the ball a lot in that era. They were also throwing a lot, but
sounds like Baylor.
It was Baylor. It was kind of a longevity play here.
Shock Linwood.
Shock Linwood. All 5'9", 200 of them. He had 800 yards his true freshman year, 1,200 yards his sophomore season, 1,300 yards his junior year, and then another 800 yards in 2016. Shock Linwood. I would not have gotten Shock Linwood or Darren Davis. And I would have needed a hit from Brad Smith as well. So there you go. There's the number 10 all-time rushers. Just off the list, 2 more Oklahoma guys, Quentin Griffin and DeMarco Murray. 2 Red Raiders in the top 20. You want to give a hit there?
I was going to ask, how far away is Taj on this?
Taj, interesting enough, is at 34. So he would need – he's right at 3,000. He would need 700 yards to get in the top 10 all time.
Let's do some quick math together. Let me find what he needs to pass Hanspard. And let's assume he gets that. I just want to see where that would place him. I'm pulling it up.
He needs about 1,200 yards to pass Hanspard.
Yeah, he needs 1167. So for simple math, add 1,200 to what Taj has and tell me where he would be on the top whatever list.
So it'd be 42-52. He would be 5th all time, right in front of Shock Linwood.
Wow. And how many is number 1 all time?
With another 30 yards on top of that, he would pass Brad Smith for 4th all time. Cedric Benson ran for 5,540 yards in the Big 12.
So he would need 1,700.
2,500.
Oh, okay. He's at 3 flat. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. But he could very conceivably leave as Texas Tech's number 1 and top 5 in the Big 12.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Other Tech guys. Torian Henderson had so many receiving. I don't think he would be up for rushing. No. DeAndre Washington, is he close?
Washington, number 19. And the other one is the first true Big 12 running back.
Ricky Williams.
Split the difference between Spike and Mike Leach.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ricky had 1,500 yards in 98. And he got hurt in 99. Only played 1 game. and then had 420 in Mike's first year and 700 in his final season. So his first 2 seasons as true freshman and in 98 were 894 and 1582. And then Mike got here and he didn't quite run the ball as much.
I think he started catching passes though when
He
Leach
did. He
got
had
here.
600 yards receiving in 2001.
If there was college fantasy football back then, I feel like Tech running backs like Torian Henderson and Ricky Williams would have been just amazing cheat codes. Probably Shannon Woods, Baron Batch too, if you pulled up their numbers. But they were like, yeah, the rushing totals don't wow you, but they were so involved in the passing game, they would have been lethal in that kind of format.
Kyle's anybody ever told you look like Sam Howell?
No. That would be a new one.
I'm not going to read the rest of the comments here, but that one.
Do we need to talk through the countdown controversy?
Yeah, let's do that as part of your final thoughts here.
You know, it was predictable that we would list some guys and I would go, oh, he should be higher. We got our first, he should be lower. What do you think in putting him this high? And it was about Tyree Wilson. And I think really all it boils down to is which factors or criteria do you weigh in the equation. We were pretty forthright with ours that longevity mattered, which hurts a guy like BJ Simmons. Contribution to team success matters. Moments of peak greatness, professional career. I hope y'all can hear everything that's going on in the kitchen over here.
Wait, hold on. There you go.
There it is. I can't remember what else, but Tyree Wilson going 7th overall in the NFL draft definitely helped his standing in this. And awards and accolades, we said that mattered. So he was an All-American as well. So yeah, that's all it boils down to. If it was like best seasons ever by a Red Raider, BJ Simmons is higher than Tyree Wilson, no doubt. If it was like highest peak as a Red Raider, BJ Simmons is higher than Tyree Wilson. But I think since Donnie Anderson, we haven't had a Red Raider go top 7 in the NFL draft. Plus, he was an All-American while he was here. He was arguably, in my opinion, the best player on the best team we've had in the last 15 years. Oh, we said we would consider era as well. So Tyree Wilson certainly a bright spot within the 10 or 15-year era that he played within. And like Dwayne Slay was today, didn't get any pushback there. One season, just like BJ Simmons, but was All-American, Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year, set a Big 12 record for forced fumbles. It's like a very high peak for a one-season contributor. And those are honestly maybe the hardest to weigh. But anyway, I think the closer we get to 0, the more controversy there will be. But with Tyree Wilson, you look at other guys that were All-American and or drafted top 10. Like if we push it out to 10 to include Crabtree and Mahomes. Mahomes wasn't All-American, but you look at any Red Raider drafted in the top 10, it's E.J. Holub, Donnie Anderson, Dave Parks, Michael Crabtree, Patrick Mahomes. All 5 of those guys are in the Ring of Honor, by the way.
Yep.
And then maybe some guy in the 40s like Walt Schlinkman or something. So anyway, Tyree Wilson has something in common with guys whose names are on the stadium. And on top of that, had a very good college career. He was an All-American. So I kind of knew there would be pushback on where we had BJ Simmons. Although, again, being a top 40 player in an entire program's history is still an incredible accomplishment. That's not a slight on BJ Simmons. So I'll be curious to see how much debate is generated over the next, 4.5 weeks? Because I think people will start to get a little more sensitive on Kingsbury should be ahead of Harrell. Harrell should be ahead of Kingsbury. Crabtree, Harrell, that one is always hard. They always get lumped together like they're the same guy. We'll see. We're not trying to upset anybody. None of it is clickbait. We're trying to be as consistent with the criteria that we laid out as possible.
Yeah.
And would love to see all of your top 100 lists.
I wonder. I wonder if they'll be pushed back at number one.
There will be.
I wonder how big, because you'll see from days out that people are going to start putting it together. That
Really.
With guy hasn't been mentioned. That
with 2 days to kick off, you're like, I wonder who's going to be number one on this list.
Yeah.
We're also at the point where if you're like, well, maybe not quite yet, but certainly like 10 or 15, if you're like, oh, I wonder if this guy's going to make the list. Like when we're in the 80s or 90s, it's feasible. Like a guy that you have 110, we might have number 78 or vice versa. But once we get into the top 15, 20, like everybody probably has the same 15 or 20 players, just in a different order. So if you're like, I haven't seen Johnny Mack on the list yet. Like, spoiler, he's not top 30. That's not a shot at Johnny Mack. A lot of really good players didn't make the cut. So anyway, if like Zach Thomas isn't mentioned after 2 days till kickoff, you'll know that number one is going to be Zach Thomas. We didn't leave off Zach Thomas, I promise.
I don't think we did. No, I don't think we left off Zach Thomas. I think he'll be toward the top one, inside the top 20, I would assume.
That has kept me up at night, though, if I like miscounted. And if I'm going to get to like day 8 and go, crap, there's 9 guys left, only 8 days, what do we do?
We're gonna be on Sunday.
It's like, will anybody notice if we just don't have Michael Crabtree on this list?
Yeah, we'll do a double.
Yeah, that's what we kind of did that. We cheated at the beginning to put a few guys. I think it was a 3-way tie for number 100.
What day were we on today?
Today's 34, and I think today was Dwayne Slay. Maybe that was yesterday.
No, that's right. All right, so how many days until we got? 34 days. So you count it right.
Should I give the people a couple hints
of who's coming? Yeah, let's do it.
I think everybody left except one is an All-American. No, that's not right. There'll be a few non-All-Americans. We've got some Baylor ties, unfortunately, coming up pretty soon here.
Maybe some Baylor coachings.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. And they're doing good on the recruiting trail.
Yes, they are.
I think they're just buying players, which is allowed. Anybody can do that. So good for them. I wish it wasn't happening at our expense, but it is. They're going to flip.
I do enjoy the newest one going instead of Texas to Baylor, even though I would prefer he come here.
Well, that was weird because we beat SMU for that player initially, which they're also throwing around money like crazy. So when that happened, I was like, okay, this guy's not just bag chasing. We got him. And then I guess whatever Baylor is paying is enough. So good for them.
Yeah.
So we got some Baylor ties coming up. We've got some recent players. Rob, Ryan,
Kyle
made a very good effort to balance eras and not do what I criticize others of doing at the outset of this show, which is only remembering the 21st century. But you list some guy who held a school record for 20 years that he set in the 40s, and like 12 people will like that tweet. They do not care. They've never heard of this guy. They don't care that he was 3 times all-border conference, that he left during his junior year to go fight in World War II and then came back and won the border conference. They don't care.
Yeah.
And then you put, this guy threw for 5,000 yards, and of course they love it. But there's no appreciation for different eras. Though I think we're done with most of the border conference. I think we have maybe 2, maybe 3 border conference guys left. It's also tough. It's tough to give the big men some love because offensive linemen don't really have stats. So unless a guy was all Big 12, there's nothing to remark on really. All these other guys oh, you have tackles, yards, catches, touchdowns, INTs. offensive linemen, I guess I maybe could find that somewhere, like sacks allowed or something, but they're just the ultimate team player. Like you read an offensive lineman's Hall of Fame induction, and it's like he paved the way for this 2,000-yard rusher who's also in the Hall of Fame. You know, it's all just team accolades that he led them to a 10-win season by anchoring the offensive line. So anyway, that's tough because some of these guys have incredible stats and they're really good players. But it's like, how do you weigh that up against an offensive lineman who doesn't have stats but played every single snap for the same exact team or something?
Ryan says, did Rob say final thoughts 30 minutes ago is the bit back? I think that's a football season bit, so we're pretty close.
We've had some 3-hour episodes. An hour 25 is child's play.
Child's play. 85 minutes of us.
Money, give us a quick rundown, initial thoughts on all 30 basketball games on the schedule. Just kidding.
In order.
I think we're looking at an undefeated season. No, really digging my heels in on kind of looking around the rest of the Big 12. Feel like I've got a good pulse on this specific group and kind of trying to look around the league, especially around newcomers, see who's sticking out. And it's pretty crazy. Like I was trying to do some power rankings just to like kind of get it through my head of what the conference can look like. But like 1 through 10, really like 1 through 7, I could see there's a real possibility of them winning the Big 12. But like 1 through 10, maybe 1 through 12, like it's not an impossible feat for one of those teams to be able to pull it off. So it is really, really deep. I'm interested to see kind of which of the newcomers kind of elevate to the level of play that's in the Big 12. I think Arizona is an obvious one to watch for, but what is like an Arizona State, Colorado, Utah? Those are big unknowns for me, and I have those 3 teams pretty close to the bottom of the league right now. But you start kind of going through preseason teams and just looking at the talent around this league, it's crazy how much more competitive it's going to get with a team like Arizona added to the mix. And then you have UCF, who's just tearing apart the recruiting trail. West Virginia, what are they going to look like with Tucker DeVries? And, how does his game translate to the Big 12? So I think BYU's on a good track after losing their head coach this offseason. Is Cincinnati going to be better? So there's a lot of question marks for me still, but I think it's a really, really deep and a really, really talented conference this year, as it has been for years on end. But again, I think you've got 6 to 7 teams who I think will have the mindset that they're going to compete for a Big 12 championship next season. And I would certainly have Texas Tech in that mix.
I have no sense of the basketball portal, but I feel like I saw a guy commit somewhere like a week ago, and I was like, are the rosters not set yet? I mean, like by this point, does everybody have their guys, or is there still a couple of unknowns out there?
Pretty much everything's set.
Okay.
At least Big 12 wise. I think most everybody has got a good grasp. I know Oklahoma State's still looking for like 2 spots to use. I think they've got a couple of schollies open, but I think everyone else is pretty much set.
And when do we get the non-con schedule? Have you heard any whisperings on what that could or won't include?
Yeah, I think they had their first open practice of the summer this past week. I think McCaslin said it should be getting finalized soon. I know they locked in the Wyoming game in November, but I think they still have 2 non-conference spots open that they need to fill. I think there's 2 games that you're still looking to add. So should get some more clarity around those, but I would imagine it's not going to be a Q1, Q2 opportunity. I think you're going to be looking at a Northwestern State.
Overall, do you think I've always griped when they have like 8 or 9 quad 4 games. Do you think they avoided going too heavy on quad 4? Like, will we at least have quad 3-ish kind of potential there?
I don't know. It's not looking super strong so far, and you obviously got dealt a bad hand with the Big East, Big 12 battle. You got DePaul, which does not give you any sort of quality win opportunity whatsoever. So I think it might be light this year. I think you've only got one tournament on the books, unless I'm mistaken, and that's the trip that you're taking to Brooklyn, with Texas in that bracket as well. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see what they do with those last two, because I think they could use a little boost in terms of scheduling. But again, the more I look at the league and the rosters, it's starting to make even more sense why Big 12 coaches might want to go a little light before you get into this nonstop, slaughterhouse.
Yeah, and with 20 conference games, that does mitigate. To me, that's two, like probably quad 2 at worst games that you're trading out for 2 quad 4 games in the non-con. So that goes a long way in and of itself. I got excited today when Kellen Buffington quote tweeted a video, and he said the best passer in the country to the best shooter in the country. And the clip did not include JT Toppin or Darion Williams, who might be like your 2 best all-around players. So that framing, I was like, okay, we've got 2 absolute dogs with great all-around games and the best passer in the country and the best shooter in the country with like the numbers to back it up. That's not just, sorry, Joey, but like last year when he said, oh, we've got the best quarterback room in the country. Okay. Like we've actually got guys that have like led the country in assist rates, 3-point shooting, and neither one of them is one of our top 2 best all-around players. So that could be a fun recipe.
I think they really, really like their team too. Like obviously there's coach speak that always gets presented to the media, but I think even behind the scenes, the real sense is they really like the guys they brought in. They feel like they all kind of click together and work well together. And it's kind of embodied in that clip that you just mentioned of you brought in a guy like Hawkins, who's been one of the best facilitators in college basketball, to go and complement the pieces around him, like a Kerwin Walton, like a Chance McMillan, like a JT Toppin.
Yeah. All right. Ryan wants us to shut up. So Rob, you have any final thoughts?
Well, it's just the comment section off the rails. There was an Arizona State Twitter account that said Arizona has the best Mexican food in the country. Did you see this?
Yeah, they're at Chili's.
Yeah. Oh, that is good.
What's pathetic is I saw a bunch of people take the bait. It's like surely this is a joke, right? Like they're at Chili's.
And then the same guy said, "Facts or no facts, Coach BC," which is famously Brian Carrington, the TCU coach that initialized the Cactus movement. There was also, and Dwayne brings it up, my favorite commenter now instead of King Hunter. Dwayne says, Big Game Boomer getting community noted on Twitter. There was a comment that said, say something nice about Texas Tech, he tweeted. And somebody's like, well, the guns up signal's pretty cool. And then he said they actually stole that from Oklahoma State. And somebody community noted that Texas Tech actually had guns up hand signal like 30 years prior. And that pistols firing was coined in, I think, 2000. So they were actually quite a ways behind Texas Tech there.
Yeah, a good friend of all of ours, I don't think he'd mind me saying this, Briggsy, said that he went to Stillwater when Tech played them in like the, I don't know, late 80s, early 90s. He said nobody in their stadium did pistols firing or finger guns. Like it wasn't a thing. And yeah, you're right. I think the university adopted it as like an official hand sign in 71, 73, something like that. So I don't know if there's any like documentation of that, but to me, he's a very trustworthy source. We were doing it at least, I would say 15, 20 years before they were.
At the risk of getting him back on my algorithm, I will look at Big Game Boomer's community note.
Yeah, I haven't seen much Boomer content. Does he still do a daily list?
Yes. Today was top 50 special teams coordinators in college football. And he retweeted himself. Let's see. Say one positive thing about the Texas Tech Red Raiders. The guns up hand signal is kind of cool. Okay, so apparently his wife is an Oklahoma State Cowboy.
Yeah.
Cowgirl. And she's the one that said it. So he believed her.
That's cap.
It's on mine. It was in the Discord, I guess. All right, that's all I have.
I listened to a Chiefs podcast that I promise this isn't a long-winded thing. I can see the look on your face, Rob. All offseason, they've been this is my first offseason listening to this Chiefs podcast because I started consuming more Chiefs content after the Super Bowl. But every single episode they do all offseason, once they hit like 1 hour, they go, all right, I think we're out of time for offseason thoughts, so we'll do that next week. And it's like a segment called Offseason Thoughts. And at first I thought like legitimately they had too much NFL draft discussion, so they're not going to get to offseason thoughts. And then it took me longer than it should have to realize that there is no offseason thoughts segment. They just say that at the end of every episode. Kind of like if you've seen the show Arrested Development, they always tease like the next episode and it's not what's in the next episode. So we could do that, except we do final thoughts and they go on for forever. But that'd be funny if after like 2.5 hours on a typical episode, we were like, well, we ran out of time for this or that segment.
It's like Lindsey Buckingham on the next episode of What's Up With That? SNL sketch. Ooh wee. What's up with that? What's up with that? Y'all don't know that one? Keenan Thompson. What's up with that? Y'all really don't know that sketch?
Nope.
It's iconic. The bit in there is there's I guess a guitarist from a band, Lindsey Buckingham, who is a guest at the end of the panel, and they always get to two guests, and then they never get to him at the end. And so there was a reoccurring character. Probably did it 20 times, and Bill Hader as Lindsey Buckingham never said a word on the sketch. He just sat there in his Lindsey Buckingham costume. Jason Sudeikis did the Running Man in the red Adidas tracksuit. No bells. Wow, that's one of my favorite SNL skits of all time. Characters. He just starts singing throughout the whole episode and says, does the what's up with that? I'll DM you one. It's funny.
I sent y'all the video of Sterling Porcher at MTSU if y'all haven't seen that yet.
Yes, I watched it earlier. You can see me laugh on the screen.
It's good stuff.
Yeah. All right, on the next episode of Dragon Ball Z, Ryan says, and then he gave me crickets.
Is that what DBZ means?
I was assuming. I didn't really know. Final thoughts?
I think we've covered enough ground here.
All right.
Love y'all.